Hi, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well, and we have to talk about this Michael Jackson
movie.
A film that I admit right now I have not seen. I'm planning on seeing it. I have not seen it yet, but neither have most people. Most people have not seen this movie yet. It's just starting to open to the public, and already this movie is making an insane splash in all the wrong ways, honestly, in my opinion. Now, obviously, over the last several years, we have seen a lot of big ticket and very popular musical biopics that have done pretty well in terms of their reception, in terms of how the public felt they portrayed the artist at the center of them. But out of the gate, there was something that seemed kind of off about this Michael Jackson movie, being it either some of the singing or the makeup and the overall look of the film in the previews. The fact that it was made clear pretty early on that this movie would completely sidestep any acknowledgement or engagement with the super controversial allegations around abuse that Michael faced for years. In fact, the way the film approaches Michael's life story, it kind of ends at a point in time that conveniently was before all of that. So it just doesn't need to be talked about in any way. Anyway.
What would you say to folks who see this and they're like, you know what? They whitewashed that part.
The film takes place, from the 60s to 1988. So
Right.
It does not go into the first allegations in 2005.
Right.
So basically.
But of course, the director has publicly said that there may in fact be a sequel to the movie where that will be addressed or talked about in some way, which one, I think is pretty scummy because you're essentially using these horrible allegations and horrible experiences some have had to deal with, have been life-ruining for some, and using that to sell moviegoers on a second film.
But it sounds like there may be a sequel.
Could be a sequel.
There could be.
It could be. We don't know
The
yet.
price is right.
Like, all that really does is speak to just how much of a cash grab those involved with this movie see it as, honestly. And they're raking in the money and the positive reviews already. When I say positive reviews, I mean the litany of super fans who have basically flooded platforms like Rotten Tomatoes to show just how wrong the critics are, because the critic score for the film on platforms like that is not really all that great right now. In fact, some super sensitive Michael fans have taken to the internet to say just how wrong and out of touch and stupid the critics are for not seeing the genius behind this movie and the genius behind Michael, as if enjoyment of his music is what's holding people back from praising this film. Now, look, I understand as somebody who enjoys Michael Jackson's music, who will stand 10 toes down for records like Bad, for records like Off the Wall. I think Michael was a legendary artist, a great musician, a game-changing, in fact. His legacy in the greater pop canon is completely solidified, and we most likely are going to be listening to Michael Jackson's music in some capacity for the next 100 years. And for his most devoted followers who often overlook the more controversial aspects of his life, reminding us like, hey, but what about the music? Why are we boiling Michael down to this and, not talking about the music and not focusing on the music, da-da-da-da-da. I hear you and I understand. We all have access to the music. We're all hearing the music. We all like the music. The music is everywhere. Nobody is going to be taking Michael Jackson's music away from you. Like what you're demanding, what you're asking for, we already have. But unfortunately, access to Michael's music, celebration of Michael's music is not enough. His fans need to also use broader enjoyment of his music and the popularity of his albums, of his music videos, of his various iconic eras. That needs to be used to launder his reputation and erase anything bad anybody could possibly say about him. In concept, I do sort of understand the idea of maybe doing a film where you touch down on the first leg of his life and sort of that moment in the music industry where he popped off and was the most relevant and was the most popular moment in musical history that really set the tone for a lot of pop music to come. I get that and I understand that. I think if we lived in a society that had sort of a fair, clear-eyed view of Michael and his various controversies, his highs and his lows, that in and of itself would not necessarily be a harmful thing. But the decision to completely avoid those elements of Michael's life has only provided a space for his most sycophantic followers to continue to force this larger erasure of anything that was controversial about his life, about his behaviors, about everything that went down at Neverland and the various interactions that he had with kids. I understand enjoying the music and celebrating music, and I wish that's all this movie was doing, but it's not. People are just using the popularity of this film and the lack of background and context and information in this movie as a chance to basically say, yeah, all this other stuff, it didn't happen, or it's made up, or it's a lie, or you're crazy for thinking there's any validity to any of it. Here's the actual proof. Look at this movie, which we're just going to pretend is like a fucking documentary. And it's funny because Michael Jackson and a lot of his biggest supporters perpetually like to act like victims on the internet, victims in various public discourse spaces, acting like they are constantly on the defense when it comes to anything having to do with Michael. But simultaneously, the flood of sort of positive comments and the almost like treatment of him like he's a religious figure that we have seen over the past 48 hours has been absolutely insane, has been crazy. The movie apparently is already raking in millions of dollars at the box office. With the way Michael's reputation is getting whitewashed with this movie and the way that his estate was able to completely like obliterate the availability of the Leaving Neverland documentary from HBO, like these are instances of them clearly having the higher ground when it comes to controlling the narrative around Michael's legacy. I'm sorry, but taking all of this into account, along with the fact that Michael Jackson was able to fight off these original allegations in court, just further show that you guys are not the underdogs here. If anything, it's been difficult for the truth to come out because as somebody who was an elder millennial, was a kid when these trials took place, I will say that generationally, the ball has been dropped in a lot of ways here, either by the Gen Xers and the boomers who during a time when this trial was, at its peak and a lot of people were watching it and Michael Jackson's reputation was obviously taking a hit. A lot of people were joking about the accusations against Michael and making fun of him and kind of calling him out as a freak, but much of it wasn't really being talked about with the gravity that these sorts of accusations should. Then there's people of my generation who grew up looking at the situation with child's eyes, not really understanding fully what was going on, enjoying the music that we still heard on a regular basis on the radio, on MTV, so on and so forth. And I feel like over time, millennials had a much kind of like softer view of Michael's reputation as they got older, especially around the time of his passing. But now, with this film recently coming out and a lot of younger people who are like post-Me Too movement, who are kind of like living in the era of the Epstein files and are looking at this story with clear, fresh eyes and are seeing some of the weird images of like, certain pictures and materials that Michael kept in his home, are seeing the details of some things his lawyers were willing to admit to during the trial in terms of his behaviors, or seeing the interviews that Michael gave about, sharing his bed and so on and so forth. It all reads as freakishly weird and not okay.
Why do you love these pictures?
Yeah, that's okay.
It fills my heart with bliss. I feel God, really. I honestly do. I'm telling you straight up. My room is just decorated.
I know, I've been there.
Yeah.
Even your computer's got pictures, isn't it? On the screensaver.
As we sit here today, do you still think that it's acceptable to share your bed with children?
Of course. Of course, why not? And I didn't sleep in the bed with the child. Even if I did, it's okay. I slept on the floor. I didn't say I slept in the bed. Even if I did sleep in the bed, it's okay.
And while Michael's fans are still coming at these narratives with, the excuses of like, oh, well, he had a rough childhood and he saw himself as a child and he was just all about, love and openness and this and that, like those explanations are not working anymore. I'm sorry, but there's like no type of context or upbringing or anything that would lead up to this point that would excuse that kind of behavior or make it cool or make it okay. I don't want to hear the talk about like what the children might have been told to say or like the character of their parents and so on and so forth. That does not mean Michael's behavior in these situations was not weird. Look, even though, again, I'm sensitive to the idea that, the man made some great music and there's nothing wrong with listening to it, and that sometimes the controversies around Michael have been kind of like misconstrued or misused in certain ways, like recently in how he was like thrown into the Epstein files that the Trump administration saw fit to put out into the public in order to distract from the elected politicians who are in the Epstein files many more times over. I hear that and I see that, but simultaneously, I also see in recent instances of like this new documentary about Corey Feldman, which was in a lot of ways a goofy but also a sad watch, mostly because at one key moment, there is an interview snippet, including Corey, talking about the time when he was a minor, when Michael Jackson showed him, which, because of how dark and weird and disturbing of an interaction that is, Corey had no choice for his own sanity other than to like sit there and try to rationalize that behavior and think like, yeah, there's no way I could have been getting groomed there. I don't think that's what was happening, because obviously to face that truth and acknowledge it, especially on such a large public platform like he was during that interview, would be just so mentally self-destructive. But still, I think there is truth to what Corey is saying there in terms of like what happened to him, what he survived as a kid in that moment. And honestly, as much as these people say like, it's about the music, we got to love the music, we got to celebrate the music, it's actually not about the music. It's not about the fucking music at all for you. You are in love with this man and you want people to like this man as much as you do. And you're trying to use the music nefariously to get people to forget and ignore the aspects of his life that didn't reflect well on him.
And what I also love about Michael is how tender it really is with him. It's loving, and I appreciated that. But I also kept thinking, was that a choice you made intentionally, or does Michael's story of greatness just naturally pull you in that direction?
Michael's story of greatness pulls you in that very spiritual direction. We start using it on the set. He would ask you to do something, even if it was like, that wasn't a good take. Can we do another one with love? That was always what he led with, you know, let's do it again with love. But I think the key is like, who was he as a human being?
Yeah.
Just stay on that path and then we'll be okay, because that's what it's about. It's a biopic.
People who can look at Michael Jackson and see the controversies and still be able to listen to and enjoy his music on occasion and appreciate the context that they sit within in popular music, those are the actual fans of his music. You guys are in a cult without a cult leader. And no matter how many movies and positive reviews and box office sales there are, that's not going to change that. You are sick and you need some serious help. And I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think about all of this stuff down in the comments. I'm sure you will. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Michael Jackson, blech, forever.